My name is Claire. I am 28 years old, and until recently, I believed I had a peaceful life. I lived in a small apartment with my husband, Ryan. We had been married for 3 years. Our life was simple. We both worked long hours, but every evening we came home to each other. We cooked dinner together, watched television on the couch, and talked about small things before bed. Sometimes we argued, like every couple does, but we always fixed things quickly. I trusted him completely, and I thought he trusted me too. Everything changed 6 weeks ago when I gave birth to our daughter. The labor was long and painful. By the time it was over, I felt completely exhausted. My body hurt, my head was spinning, and I could barely keep my eyes open. But the moment the nurse placed my baby in my arms, none of that mattered anymore. She was tiny and warm, wrapped carefully in a soft pink blanket. I stared at her little face and immediately started crying. I kissed her forehead and held her against my chest. In that moment, I felt a kind of love I had never felt before. Then I noticed Ryan standing beside the hospital bed, staring at the baby with a strange expression on his face. He looked confused, almost nervous. Instead of smiling, he kept looking back and forth between me and our daughter. "Ryan?" I asked softly. "What's wrong?" He hesitated before speaking. "Why does she look like that?" I frowned, confused by the question. "What do you mean?" "She doesn't look like us," he said quietly. "Her hair, her eyes." I looked down at my daughter again. She had very pale blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Ryan and I both had dark brown hair and brown eyes. At first, I didn't think much about it. Babies can look different when they are born. I had heard many stories about babies changing completely after a few months. "Babies change," I explained gently. "Her hair and eyes could become darker later." But Ryan still looked uncertain. He crossed his arms and stared silently at the baby. The happiness I felt only moments earlier suddenly became mixed with fear. I was exhausted and emotional, and the way he looked at our daughter made my chest feel tight. The next day, we returned home. My older sister, Nora, stayed with us to help me during the first week. She cooked meals, cleaned the apartment, and helped carry the baby when my arms felt weak. Without her, I honestly don't know how I would have survived those first days. Ryan, however, became more distant with each passing day. He barely touched the baby. Sometimes he stood near the crib and stared at her quietly, almost like he was searching for something. He stopped laughing. He stopped talking to me unless it was necessary. One night, after Nora went to sleep in the guest room, Ryan sat across from me at the kitchen table. His face looked serious. "We need to talk," he said. Immediately, I felt nervous. "Okay." He took a deep breath. "I think we should do a paternity test." For a moment, I thought I heard him wrong. I stared at him in complete shock. "What?" "A paternity test," he repeated. "I need to know if the baby is really mine." His words hit me so hard that I almost stopped breathing. I'd just given birth to our daughter, and now my husband was accusing me of cheating on him? "Ryan," I whispered, "how can you even think that?" He looked away from me. "The baby doesn't look like either of us. It doesn't make sense." Tears filled my eyes immediately. "I never cheated on you. Never." "I just need proof," he replied coldly. I felt anger and heartbreak at the same time. "You're asking me for proof after everything we've been through together?" "If you refuse," he said quietly, "then maybe this marriage is over." The room suddenly felt cold and heavy. I looked down at my sleeping daughter in my arms. She looked peaceful and innocent, completely unaware of the pain filling the room around her. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him to leave immediately. But I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. I barely had the strength to stand. "Fine," I said softly. "We'll do the test." Ryan nodded once. He didn't apologize. He didn't comfort me. He simply stood up and walked away. The next morning, he packed a bag. I watched him from the bedroom doorway while holding the baby close to my chest. "Where are you going?" "To my parents' house." My heart dropped instantly. "You're leaving?" "I need space." Those words hurt almost as much as the accusation itself. "You're seriously leaving me alone after I just gave birth?" Ryan avoided my eyes. "I just need time to think." Then he walked out of the apartment and closed the door behind him. The silence that followed felt unbearable. I sat on the couch holding my daughter and cried until my body shook. My baby started crying too, and I hugged her closer, whispering softly that everything would be okay, even though I didn't believe it myself. The following days felt endless. Ryan barely contacted me. Every message he sent was cold and short. "How's the baby?" "Did you schedule the test?" That was it. No kindness, no concern, no love. Nora stayed with me every day. She made soup when I forgot to eat and helped me during the long sleepless nights when the baby cried for hours. One afternoon, she looked at me carefully and frowned. "You look exhausted," she said quietly. "I am exhausted," I admitted. She sat beside me on the couch. "Claire, none of this is your fault." I nodded slowly, but deep inside I still felt broken. Every night after the apartment became quiet, I replayed Ryan's words in my mind. I need proof. Those words hurt more each time I remembered them. Finally, the test appointment arrived. My hands shook while dressing my daughter in a soft yellow outfit. Nora drove me to the clinic because I was too nervous to drive myself. Ryan was already waiting outside when we arrived. When I saw him, my chest tightened painfully. I still loved him despite everything. That was the hardest part. "Hi," I said quietly. "Hi," he answered. No hug, no smile. The test itself was simple. The nurses took samples quickly and explained that the results would arrive within a few days. Even though the process only lasted a short time, it felt emotionally exhausting. Afterwards, Ryan and I walked outside together in silence. "It'll take around 4 days," he said. "I know." I looked directly at him. "I didn't cheat on you." Ryan stared down at the ground. "We'll see." Those 2 words felt like another knife in my chest. The waiting period was terrible. I barely slept. My mind kept racing late at night while I sat beside my daughter's crib, listening to her breathe softly. Sometimes I whispered to her while she slept. "You are loved," I told her quietly, "no matter what happens." 3 days later, Ryan's mother called me. Her name was Patricia, and she had never fully liked me. But after Ryan told her about the situation, things became even worse. "If that baby isn't my son's child, you'll regret lying to this family." I was shocked. "I didn't lie." "We'll see the truth soon," she replied before hanging up. I stared at my phone with shaking hands. I had never felt so alone in my life. Finally, on the 4th day, the clinic called. "Your results are ready." My heart started beating so hard that I could hear it in my ears. This was the moment, the truth. I immediately texted Ryan. He answered almost instantly. "I'll meet you there." Nora drove me again because my hands were trembling too badly to drive. During the entire ride, I held my daughter close to my chest and tried to stay calm. Ryan was already waiting inside the clinic lobby when we arrived. Neither of us spoke much while the nurse led us into a small white room. She handed us an envelope,
and left quietly. The room became completely silent. The envelope sat on the table between us like something dangerous. "You open it," I said softly. Ryan swallowed hard before picking up the paper. His hands were shaking slightly. I watched his face carefully while he read the results. At first, he looked focused. Then suddenly his eyes widened. All the color disappeared from his face.
I already knew the answer before seeing the paper myself, but I still leaned closer and read it carefully. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Ryan was the father. Of course he was. Relief rushed through my body immediately, but under that relief was deep anger and sadness. I looked directly at him. "I told you." Ryan stayed silent for several seconds. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." But the apology felt small compared to the damage he caused. "You left me alone," I said quietly. "You accused me of cheating after I gave birth to your child." He rubbed his face nervously. I was confused. "No," I replied firmly. "You chose not to trust me." Ryan looked ashamed now. For the first time in weeks, he seemed to understand how deeply he hurt me. "I missed her first weeks," he said softly while looking at our daughter. "I missed everything." "Yes," I answered. "You did." The room became silent again. Then Ryan looked at the baby for a long moment before whispering, "She looks like me now." I stared at him in disbelief. That sentence hurt me more than he realized. Now that a piece of paper proved she was his daughter, suddenly he could see himself in her. Before that, all he saw was doubt. Ryan slowly reached for my hand across the table, but I gently pulled it away. "I don't know if I can forgive this," I admitted honestly. Pain filled his eyes immediately. "Please, Claire, I'll do anything." I shook my head slowly. Trust doesn't return overnight. That evening, Ryan came back home with me. The apartment felt different now, almost unfamiliar. Nothing magically became perfect after the results. Some days were calm, while others were painful. Sometimes I looked at Ryan and remembered every lonely night I spent crying while he stayed at his parents' house. Still, little by little, he began trying harder. He woke up at night to help feed the baby. He changed diapers. He cooked dinner when I was too tired to stand. Most importantly, he listened whenever I talked about my pain instead of becoming defensive. One night, while our daughter slept peacefully between us, Ryan looked at me quietly. "I hate myself for what I did," he admitted. I stayed silent for a moment before answering honestly. "I hated you for a while, too." He nodded slowly. "I know." "I needed you," I continued softly, "more than ever before. And you left." Tears filled his eyes immediately. "I know. I can't change that." For the first time since everything happened, I finally saw real regret in him. Weeks passed slowly. Some days we laughed together again like before. Other days felt awkward and distant. Healing was not simple. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. One afternoon, I sat near the living room window holding my daughter while sunlight filled the apartment. Ryan was asleep on the couch after staying awake most of the night, helping with the baby. I looked at him quietly and thought about everything we survived. The accusation, the loneliness, the anger, the heartbreak. Then I looked down at my daughter sleeping peacefully in my arms. I realized something important in that moment. Love alone is not enough to keep a relationship strong. Trust matters just as much, maybe even more. Without trust, fear can destroy everything very quickly. I also learned something about myself. I was stronger than I believed. I survived sleepless nights, heartbreak, and loneliness while caring for a newborn baby. I protected my child even when I felt completely broken inside.
And because of that, I promised myself something important. I would never again allow someone to disrespect me so easily. My name is Claire. This is my story. And if there is one lesson I learned from all of this, it is simple. Never accuse someone you love without truth, because once trust is broken, even love may not be enough to repair it completely.